Hello, and welcome to this week's Torah In 10 segment. This week, we are going to cover actually two different portions. One is Tazria, which means she conceives, and then the other portion we're going to cover is called Metzora, which is a person afflicted with leprosy. So the Torah portion is going to start off in Leviticus chapter 12, and that's going to go to Leviticus 13, verse 59 for the first portion of Tazria. And then it's going to pick up for the second portion in Leviticus 14 and stop at chapter 15, verse 33 for Metzora. So last week we talked about what type of fuel that we put into our car vis-a-vis the food that we put into our bodies. What's considered food, what's not considered food. And so this week we're going to be talking about if something, if our vehicle, if our body, the car is leaking fluid, and that's our signal that something's wrong, and that's to be a signal for us to take a step back and examine to see what's actually going on with the car. And so it's all about really the message behind all of it. It's about being clean and holy before the Lord. And we already covered last week that there's nothing that we can do to make ourselves clean or holy. It's about, the Lord does that through Yeshua's blood, but it's about just maintaining that holiness in our lifestyle. And so, and also too, when we read this Torah portion, just keep in mind too, when you read about this or you read through this uncleanliness wasn't a sin, or being spiritually impure, like most have taken these chapters to mean. They've actually taken it the wrong way. It's actually about being ceremonially or ritually unclean, and it's all about being clean in order to be holy enough to go back into the presence of the Lord at the temple. So keep that in mind when you read through that. The next portion, which we're going to spend most of our time on today, is the Metzora portion, which is about the person being afflicted with leprosy. When we read about leprosy, it was believed that leprosy, when someone had it, it was directly caused and related to sin. Sin in someone's life, or sin that was happening on the inside first. It's all started with what was going on in the heart and examining what was happening and why that person had leprosy. A lot of times was directed or related to there's an underlying issue that had to involve with sin. In fact, if you remember, and we're going to reference John chapter 5, verse 14, Yeshua healed the leper and said, "Now stop sinning, lest something worse happen to you." But it's more than just a skin condition. It's more than what's just going on the surface here. It's about what's going on underneath, what's going on in that person's heart. Spiritual leprosy is a result of words that we say about others or to others. That's what's considered spiritual leprosy. So it reveals really what's going on inside of our hearts. Yeshua said in Matthew 12:34, "Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." So it not only harms the person that these words are directed to, but it also harms the person that spoke them. So there's stuff that happens not just physically right away in the form of physical leprosy, but there's definitely something spiritually happening with inside when we speak these words that are ill, whether, like I said, about someone or to someone. Eventually, depending on how God's mercy extends to someone, depending on how long he decides to extend that mercy, it will eventually affect them physically as well. Numbers 12, we see this story later on when we get through the Torah, that Miriam opposed Moses, and she got leprosy. It started out with gossip to her brother Aaron and some collusion going on there, and then straight out just opposing God's anointed. So this also should be a warning to us today as part of the body of Messiah. What we say about our fellow brethren and how we talk about our leaders, we should definitely pay attention to because God does not take it lightly. His mercy is vast and great, but he doesn't take it lightly. Our words are powerful, and so we need to make sure we guard what comes out. Ecclesiastes 10:20, Solomon says, not to insult our rulers or even think about insults about them, because a little birdie might carry the news and repeat what we had just said. So again, very important that we guard our words. In Proverbs 18:21, it says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." Proverbs 15:4 says, a soothing tongue is a tree of life, but when it twists things, it breaks the spirit. Some of these examples, that's in the church today heavily is gossiping, making fun of people, even behind their backs, or even, making fun of people behind their backs or to others. I mean, bearing a false witness, lying about someone. And this is something that's interesting because it's a big deal among Christians today. You won't necessarily see the Christian out there openly, smoking marijuana or, what is another one? May not be, drinking and getting drunk all the time, and some of these outward things, or maybe they control their tongue and they don't swear and use curse words and stuff. A lot of this outward stuff that we can all see, but one of the things that you see a lot happening inside the church body is spiritual leprosy throughout with gossip, talking about others behind their back, talking about so-and-so and bearing a false witness. That is what's happening in a lot of the body here through Messiah is that spiritual leprosy. What's interesting is medical science has actually finally caught up to what its creator actually has to say about this in the subject matter. It says, according to a recent WebMD article, words really do hurt. Studies showed that words alone will activate pain responses. And science is finally catching up to what our creator already we knew from the foundation and laid in the foundation when he created the earth. There's articles recently here, even like articles like WebMD, that are backing that up. But as believers were instructed, Paul says this in Ephesians 4:29, let no harmful language come from your mouth, only good words that are helpful in meeting the need, words that will benefit those who hear them. James 3, verses 5 through 9, it says, the tongue is a tiny part of the body, yet it boasts great things. See how a little fire sets the whole forest ablaze. Yes, the tongue is a fire, a world of wickedness. This tongue is so placed in our body that it defiles every part of it, setting ablaze the whole of our life. And it is set on the fire by Gehenna itself. Gehenna is just a reference to where they used to throw dead bodies outside of the city. But for people have tamed and continue to tame all kinds of animals. They've been able to tame birds and reptiles and sea creatures and all types of animals. But the tongue is something that no one can tame. It is an unstable and evil thing, full of death and dealing poison. With it we bless the Lord the Father, and with it we curse people who were made in his image. Very, very powerful stuff. Jesus said it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles us, it's what comes out. And when Jesus said this, a lot of people will use this as a verse text to say, hey, he said right there, it doesn't matter what you eat. But actually what Jesus said there, and just a sidebar here, it wasn't against Torah about not being, not eating clean or unclean, because actually, in Leviticus 11, it says nowhere in Leviticus 11, what we covered last week, that the actual eating of unclean foods makes you unclean. Leviticus 11 says specifically it's about touching it. Anyways, just wanted to throw that out there. Jesus, Yeshua, was not taking a 180 on the Torah here saying, hey, eat whatever you want because it's all abolished. He didn't do that, right? But it's easily seen here the spiritual application that we're to take from the Torah, what the Torah is showing us here. Again, that's what every piece of the Torah is about. It's about every piece of it's supposed to show us how we apply it, not only physically, but spiritually. Romans 7:14, Paul said the Torah, the law, is spiritual. So here's our takeaways. Guard our words. Watch what is going on. Watch what we're putting in. Right? Because if we're listening to movies that are full with stuff, if we're entertaining friends that are all about gossiping and talking about others, we're going to feed our flesh there, and that's what we're going to produce. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Our words are very powerful. We need to be able to speak life and truth and love. Yeshua said it this way. And again, here's another thing that he's confirming, that he's a pro-Torah message versus abolishing any letter of the law. Like he said he did not come to do. But Yeshua says it this way in Matthew 22, verse 37 through 40. And he said to them, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is just like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. All of the law, the Torah, and the prophets are dependent on these two commandments. So let's make sure that we're feeding our spirit positive and edifying things so we can speak positive and edifying things to our brethren, lifting them up in the name of Yeshua, Jesus Christ. And so I hope this has blessed you in some way. May the Lord bless you and keep you until next time.